Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg admitting the Biden-Harris administration pressured his company to censor Americans, especially COVID-19 related content. Zuckerberg writing, quote, in 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree. I feel strongly that we should not compromise our content standards due to pressure from any administration in either direction. And we're ready to push back if something like this happens again. He also says he regrets censoring content related to the Hunter Biden laptop story, which government agencies initially labeled as, remember, Russian disinformation. Joining me now is Arkansas Congressman French Hill. He's the Vice Chairman of Financial Services and the Chairman of the Subcommittee on Digital Assets, also a member on the Foreign Affairs, Financial Tech, and Permanent Select Committees on Intelligence. Congressman, good morning to you. And I do want to get your initial reactions. We're learning all of this through, of course, Jim Jordan's work on his committee. Your reaction to this?
Cheryl, I'm shocked that the Biden administration somehow was pressuring social media platforms to censor information about COVID or Hunter Biden. I mean, who believes that that's stunning information? What I'm grateful for is that Jim Jordan of the House Judiciary Committee has been relentless in getting to the facts and uncovering this situation. And the question, what is the policy response? We don't want censorship out there skewing information that Americans need to have, vital information about choices on COVID-19, or the charade before the 2020 election, where some of our top former intelligence officials were essentially useful idiots by a disinformation campaign, not from the Russians, but from the Biden campaign. And so these social media platforms have got to honor their commitment to the American people as a free and open space.
What do you make about the fact that these senior officials, again, from the administration and from the White House, were putting on the pressure? What is the next step in this? And how do we get more answers about, in particular, who was, well, picking up the phone and calling Zuckerberg and his teams? And then he also said, I thought this was fascinating, he said, it's been made clear the reporting wasn't Russian disinformation. In retrospect, we should never have demoted that story.
Yeah, no, exactly. That doesn't mean that Russians and North Koreans and Iranians aren't trying to spread rumors and pit one American against the other on social media. That happens. But this was an unprecedented action by the Biden campaign calling people. So I hope Jim Jordan and the Judiciary Committee do their job, continue to have oversight hearings on this, and get to the bottom of it and make a recommendation of what the penalties are when people act inappropriately at this concentrated power source, which has become big tech.
I want to talk about the vice president now. Harris is vowing to support the middle class and her, well, still kind of light on details economic plan. But this includes a federal ban on so-called price gouging. Politico is reporting now that Hill Democrats are secretly telling anxious allies that the plan is never going to pass through Congress, through you. And then a New York Fed analysis conducted before she revealed her plan shows that rising profit margins are really not to blame for food inflation. Instead, the survey says it was surging commodity prices. It was wage increases for grocery workers. Some of our other proposals we know include housing credits, a 44.6% capital gains tax, and 25% tax on unrealized gains. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren touting Harris's plan when she was on the campaign trail recently in Wisconsin. Watch.
Kamala actually has economic plans. I know. When you're up against Trump, that's a little... it tells you the playing field doesn't look quite the same. And her idea of a fairer tax system is we cut taxes for working people, we cut taxes for families with brand new babies, and we make the billionaires pay their fair share to run this. Kamala Harris says, I'm going after the housing problem head on. Kamala is ready to take on grocery prices. She's going to take on those companies that are just out there price gouging.
To be clear here, we're talking about $5 trillion in tax increases over a decade. And the bigger question is, where does that come from? They say, well, we're going to go after the wealthy. We know, because we've seen this play out before, that it does end up impacting the middle class and the lower class. And if you're talking about raising the corporate tax rate, what is a corporation going to do? They're going to move to Ireland. And we saw that happen before.
Cheryl, I mean, let's start with Elizabeth Warren, Senator of Massachusetts, former bankruptcy professor at Harvard Law School. So she's an expert in bankruptcy, and she's on her way to bankrupting a lot of families in our country with endorsing illiterate economic policies like that have been offered by Kamala Harris. These are just warmed over bad ideas from both Democratic administrations and some Republican administrations. Richard Nixon tried price controls. They don't work. Jason Furman, Democratic economist, says it's nonsense to put your faith in price controls, rent control. Yelling at corporations is not going to reduce inflation. Stopping radical spending like the Biden-Harris administration has done is a good start at stopping inflation. And let's unleash American investment and technology by having an all-of-the-above energy strategy. You want to cut jobs, cut investment, hurt the economy, try a 44% capital gains tax. That's ridiculous. And then every American who owns anything says, oh, you want to tax my unrealized capital gain on my farm, on my stocks? What happens when the farm price goes down the next year or the stock price goes down the next year? Do I get my money back? It's just ridiculous. And it demonstrates Harris has no understanding of the market economy that is the United States.
Yeah, well, in particular, talking about, I mean, many of these grocery companies, John Catsimatidis, have come and pushed back and said, absolutely, look, that's, we're a 1 to 2% profit margin business. This is the grocery industry. And our input costs, our producer price costs, which we do the data on the show, by the way, he has said, and many companies have now said, this is not why you've seen food inflation. I do want to move on with you, though, to the migrant crisis, because that right now is putting further economic strain on housing and on transport prices for Americans. Now, Kamala Harris is touting her affordable housing plans. The state of Oregon is offering only non-U.S. citizens now a $30,000 grant for first-time homebuyers. That's funded by the taxpayers of that state. And then if you look at Massachusetts, 150 public school students are going to have no school bus service. They're citing a lack of funding and a bus shortage. And then the state has now begun paying for migrant students to be bused to school, Congressman. So it is the financial implication of plans like these coming out of Oregon or Massachusetts. I'm going to add in California with their plan to give to cover the down payments for homes for illegal migrants in that state. All of that is on the back of the taxpayer. When do these states and these voters start to push back?
Well, I think it's happening. I mean, you can't absorb millions and millions of people from an open border, from the failed Biden-Harris border policy, and not have implications for the country. We want immigration in this country, legal immigration, orderly immigration, and we've had those laws for over 100 years. And Joe Biden's turned his back on that, along with Kamala Harris, the so-called border czar, and let into our country millions of undocumented people with no plan, separating 300,000 kids that we think are now being potentially human trafficked. The cartels are making billions now. The Biden-Harris policy is make the cartels great again. They're earning billions of dollars a month in this human trafficking business, just setting records again in the Tucson corridor. Excellent Fox reporting there of 17,000 migrants crossing in just a short period of time, setting a new record in that corridor. The border is not secure, and that's why House Republicans want to pass H.R. 2 and have passed it. We need the Senate to act, and that will return order to the border, which is what we should have as our priority.
Congressman French Hill, we're always going to be watching your work on the border in particular. Thank you for being here.